Hi, this is Henry's Baseball Club. To my right here is attorney Donna Cohen. She's a fourth generation season ticket holder for the Boston Red Sox. She represents high visibility clients and on their personal and business matters. Tonight's guest is Jim Beatie, Jim Louis Beatie. He played for the Yankees, and originally he was a pitcher, and he bats right, throws right. He's 6'5", 210. Big guy, and he was born July 4th, 1954 in Hampton, Virginia. He's now around 59. His high school was Portland High School in South Portland, Maine. He was also at Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire. He was drafted by the New York Yankees in the fourth round of the 1975 amateur draft, and he made his debut on April 25th, 1978 at age 23. So the two teams he played were for the Mariners and Yankees. So the Yankees were from 78 to 79, and then 80 to 86 with the Seattle Mariners. So I had a few things to point out. If you can look at the front of the desk here, a while back there was a big article in some of the North Shore newspapers. If you can, on this side, if you can see that, that's me at the batting cages. For people that, sometimes people don't understand that we're well known. So if you want to zoom in on that, the batting cages, oh, you have it over there? And the other one, the AA Fisher Cats are having a big dinner. This year it's on the 23rd of November, 2013 at 5 p.m. It's at the Radisson Expo Center in Manchester, New Hampshire. And feel free to call them, or you can call me. I'm at 781-891-0621 if you have any questions. So let's start off with Jim Beatie. Also have a card here for Rich Gossage. I don't know if you remember him. Did you play with him, Jim, when you were was he on your team a long time ago?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Goose and I were good friends.
Good. Okay, well, let's start at the beginning, Jim. How did it all begin? When you were in high school, did you strike out the side over and over? Or tell us what brought the scouts, or how you ended up with a professional contract.
Well, I think like a lot of kids, I played a lot of sports growing up, and I really didn't pitch until I grew. I was a point guard on the basketball team when I was in the 9th grade, and I was only 5'8". And then I was 6'3" as a sophomore. And then once I grew, I started to throw the ball harder. And then my junior and senior year in high school, I pitched and pitched well. But growing up in Maine, it was a very short season. So I was recruited very little for baseball. I was recruited mostly for basketball all over the country. I also played basketball in high school, and decided to go to Dartmouth, and I was a walk-on for both basketball and baseball at Dartmouth. And really after my sophomore year, I went to the Cape Cod League and played in the Cape, as a lot of people in New England know. It's a good college league, and I think that's where I really started to get a little interest as to what I could do professionally.
So would you say at the Cape you were one of the better players?
Probably not.
Well, I mean, some people develop late, as you know. Other people develop early. I know of a guy a long time ago that used to be fantastic around here. He struck out 37 guys in 14 innings. That's unheard of in amateur ball.
Yeah. I think I actually had a losing record at the Cape. I pitched. I was a good pitcher, but I wasn't a great pitcher. I don't think I made the All-Star team or anything like that. It was a case of me not having a lot of baseball experience, just because of baseball seasons being very short in the Northeast.
I'm curious, there are a lot of times kids are very excited to try out baseball, and they're looking forward to playing for the New York Yankees or the Boston Red Sox and some of the other major league teams. But there are times when they just don't play up to what they think is their own potential. What's the best advice you give to kids who may be in the Cape Cod League or in high school and college leagues who are desperate to be able to make it?
Well, my advice is to play and have fun. I think one of the things I think they should, one of the things that is kind of sticks in my craw a little bit these days is that kids choose a sport when they're 10 or 12 years old. And I think the best thing kids could do is to play more than one sport through all the seasons, because I think you develop athleticism and you develop a sense of how to compete and win games when you play more than just one game. And I think baseball is a great sport, but I think part of the reason I was able to be a good pitcher was that I also played a lot of basketball. I developed my athleticism there. And I think it's good for all kids just to play different sports. They don't burn out mentally. They don't get overuse syndrome from playing just one sport all the time. And I think it's good for them to go out and you know, as I said, play more than one sport. It might just be two. I played two sports all the way through college, and be a fan of the game. You know, go. One of the things I think is a bit interesting in my career, I grew up in Maine. My parents never would go to Boston to take me to a game. And in those days, there was only probably one game a week, and it was never the Red Sox on TV. And I say one game a week that was on TV. There was one game a week, and it was generally the St. Louis Cardinals. So interestingly enough, I grew up more of a St. Louis Cardinals fan than anybody else.
Yeah.
We love the St. Louis Cardinals fans.
Yeah, Jim, for people that are never going to play in the Cape Cod League, was that a good league? Did you have housing? Did you have a job? I mean, the idea of this a program is to give people the inside, because a lot of people are never going to step up to the plate or take the mound in a Cape Cod League game. Were you well treated? Did you have a host family? Tell us about the Cape Cod League experience. What was that like?
Well, the Cape Cod League was different than I think it is now. I did some color commentary, the Cape Cod All-Star game a few years ago with a friend of mine who would broadcast them on TV. And I talked to the players what they do. When I played there, you had to have a job. They would usually put you up with a host family, but in our case, we were 5 of us that they gave a house, a rental to, and we had the house to ourselves. We had cars, so we had jobs during the day, and then we'd play every day at night. So it was a terrific time. You know, I had a great time out there. I worked for a Dartmouth alum, and during the day he had about 50 acres around Chatham. I played for the Harwich Club. And during the day, I would work with chainsaws and gravely machines and semi-clear land so that people could walk through his property and got all the deadfall down. So I mean, I was fortunate I came out with all my fingers after using all those chainsaws all summer, but it was a great time. He gave me the weekends off, and he gave me the day off that I pitched.
Yeah. What about, there were scouts in the stands, or?
Oh yeah.
What was that
scouts
like?
Were all over the place.
You know, taking the mound, let's say for the first time in a Cape Cod League game. Can you give us some insight on that? Because we're never gonna, you know, that's the idea of this program, is to let people know what it's like for the player that goes out to the mound or up to the plate.
Well, you know, I think when you're a player, it's what you do. It's all the way through college, you know, little league, junior high school, college, summer leagues. That's what you do. And so when you go out there, you know, I pitched, I don't know how many games by the time I got to the Cape Cod League. And, you know, I went out there and really just learned. I think the biggest thing for me was I was now facing better competition. And the one thing that was good for me that summer in particular was I could test what worked for me and what things I needed to work on in my kind of my repertoire and the way I approach pitching. And so it was a good learning experience for me.
You spent some time in player development, baseball operations, and as a coach and now as a scout. What are the things that you are looking for when you're looking at kids today?
Well, one of the first things obviously is athleticism and ability to play the game. But in a lot of cases, we're not looking for a finished product. I don't do any scouting at the amateur level. I do all pro scouting so the information I provide to our team at this point is for trade purposes. But we look for good athletes, and especially if they're young, if they're good athletic kids, they can throw the ball hard, they have a good arm, then we can teach them the game. We have players all the time that are very raw when they're 18 and 19 or 16 years old, little point in case is there's a left-handed slugger DH for the Boston Red Sox that I had in the minor league system when I was the Seattle Mariners minor league director. His name was David Arias then, and he's now known as David Ortiz. This kid was he was a 6'2", and he weighed about 160 pounds.
Yeah, okay. Now, what happened that you got signed? How did that develop?
I got drafted after the 1975 college season. I was drafted and drafted in the 4th round by the Yankees and ended up signing. And then I went and played in their minor league system in 75 in the summer, starting in June. And I started out in New York Penn League in Oneonta. And
what happened there? Were you somewhat successful there? Or?
Well,
what was that first minor league game like?
I actually reported with a sore elbow. Because I had been playing basketball before the draft and went up to dunk, and a guy came and blocked my shot from behind, and I hit my elbow on the rim. So I had a sore elbow for about a month. And then once I got healthy, I pitched for another couple of weeks in Oneonta in the New York Penn League, and then they sent me up to AAA. And I finished the season in AAA, pitching against Pawtucket and Rochester. I was playing in Syracuse then.
Okay.
So it was somewhat unheard of for a first-year player to be playing in AAA, and it probably still is these days. But
right.
The Yankees pushed me ahead because they felt I was mature enough. I was would be pushed physically in the development of my game, and so I went up there for that probably the last month and a half of the minor league season in Syracuse, that very first year.
Yeah, and then. What was that first game like? In other words, when you first came to Boston, let's say, what's it like to go out on the mound there and be facing the Boston Red Sox?
I actually liked pitching in Fenway, although my first game in Fenway was not a good one. I hadn't pitched in about 10 or 12 days, and they said, well, you're going to get a start against the Red Sox. And in those days, my mechanics weren't smooth. They weren't refined. And if I didn't pitch on a regular basis, my control went all over the place. And I look back at my mechanics now, and if I had more video, I could have probably corrected it myself. But my mechanics when I was young were not very good. And anyway, I went out there and I went about 2 1/3 innings. My very first time pitching in Boston. I had about 50 tickets I'd left for friends of mine from Maine. My parents, it was the first game my parents had seen me pitch in the major leagues, and I didn't pitch very well. And during the game, they told me I was going down to AAA. They were sending me down, so I went out to see my parents after a bad game with my bag slung over my shoulder and said, "I'm going down to AAA." So it was not a fun experience, but at that point.
Well, it's a learning experience, right?
Absolutely. I came back at the end of that year, and I went 4-2 in September. I won with a 2.70 ERA to help the Yankees get into the playoffs, which was a 1-game playoff with the Red Sox. Right. And then because of that 1-game playoff, I pitched the first game of the playoffs and won that game, and then I pitched the 5th game of the World Series and won that game.
What was the difference in how you felt the first time you pitched at Fenway Park and the night you pitched for that game you've just described?
Well, it was just a matter of me having been pitching on a regular basis. I had better command. All of my pitches were around the strike zone, and I was able to attack the hitters as opposed to just try to survive out there. And once I got to that point, I had confidence. I knew I could throw strikes, and so it was just a much different situation. Although the World Series game ended up being my first major league complete game. I'd thrown complete games in the minor leagues, but I'd never thrown a complete game in the big leagues. And the World Series game ended up being that. It was my first major league complete game. And I remember leaving the bullpen and telling the pitching coach who walked out with me, and I said, well, I don't have to worry about that. There's this old saying, sometimes they leave it in the bullpen when they look great in the bullpen. And they come into the game and they don't have anything. And I said, well, I don't have to worry about leaving it in the bullpen because I didn't have anything in the bullpen. And I think that probably was helpful because it helped me to focus and say, I've got to really bear down and figure out a way to get my stuff together here.
And how important is it, the relationship between the pitcher and the catcher?
It's important. I think you want to have a kind of a seamless, he calls a pitch, and when he calls it, it's the pitch you're thinking about, and the way he works with you and pulls things out of you. I think it's important. I've had catchers that early in my career that were very helpful. I pitched, in '78 and parts of '79 to Thurman Munson, and Thurman was very good at whatever was working that day for me, is kind of helping me to kind of get it going. And I had other catchers that really didn't even need to call the game. I could call the game myself. All I really needed them to do was to block the ball when I threw it in the dirt and to throw out the guy at second base.
Yeah.
So
I have a picture here of Goose Gossage. Is this somebody that you played with, or you knew pretty good at that time, or?
Oh yeah, Goose and I were good friends. In fact, when he went into the Hall of Fame, my wife Martha and I were good friends with Goose and Corna, his wife. We in '78. I also got married in September while we were going through all this stuff, trying to get into playoffs. And so for a wedding gift, Goose gave me his condo in Breckenridge, Colorado for 2 weeks. And so we went out there. I didn't ski. I did some cross-country skiing and hiked around Breckenridge. And then Goose came up the second week with his wife, and he brought his snowmobile. So we did a lot of snowmobile touring out there. So,
yeah. Any chance you can show some pictures of yourself as a young baseball player or something like that?
Well, I have one when I was a young Yankee, when I had hair.
It doesn't bother me as long as you're playing, you know?
There you go.
Okay. Any other pictures you want to show us, or?
No, I don't have any pictures with me. The only other thing I have with me is my World Series ring.
Oh, congratulations.
Okay. That was